All right, welcome to Life First Conversations, episode 5 with Kevin Thompson. Kevin, thank you so much for being here with me.
You are so welcome, Miguel. I'm looking forward to this.
Very good. Yeah, you and I met each other a couple of months ago. We were introduced by my good friend Vince Cavino. I think
Yes.
he had done an interview with you on your podcast, and he made an introduction to us, and then I came on your podcast, and I've been on some of the calls that you host, and I've met some people that you know. In fact, you introduced me to a business coach that I'll be working with here pretty soon as well. So it's amazing what can happen in just a couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah. You bet. What a testament right there to the power of right relationships.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what you're all about. And I'm so excited to have you on this platform where we can talk about, what relationships mean, right, to you, and really you taking this to a whole nother level where you've really made a business out of relationships, right? But before we get there, I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about you. Who is Kevin Thompson, and love to hear a little bit more about your story. Where are you calling from today?
I live in Arlington, Washington, about 40 miles north of Seattle. And I have lived in this area for my entire life. I graduated high school in '83. I spent the next 4 years in the military. I served 4 years in the military.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, and then came back home, and I spent the next 7 years working as a commercial fisherman on Alaska's Bering Sea. And that, I will tell you, that's the hardest I ever worked in my life. But other than those what 11 years, I never made it far from home. In fact, today I live 15 minutes from where I grew up. I absolutely love this part of the country. Now, this time of year, we're in December, January. It gets a little cooler and wetter, and as long as we can head south and go find some sunshine every month or so, we're good. We got family in Arizona and Texas, and so we get plenty of opportunity to just go find some sunshine and warm up in the wintertime.
That's awesome. I never knew that about you. I didn't know you served. I also didn't know you were a fisherman, commercial fisherman of all things. What did you guys fish exactly?
I worked in a lot of different fisheries. I worked crabbing. So have you ever seen that show, The Deadliest Catch?
I've seen parts of episodes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's been on Discovery Channel for years, and a bunch of those guys on that show I worked with when I worked there all those years ago, and they're still doing that to this day, and I'm
Wow.
I'm glad I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It seems exhilarating, scary.
It's all of
I
that.
just remember seeing some parts of the episodes. There's waves crashing, the
Yeah.
boats kind of tilting this way and that way. Wow. How long did you do that for?
7 years, from '88 to '95, I did that until, the last trip that I was on, we got hit, broadside with a rogue wave. A rogue wave is just a wave that comes out of nowhere, and, it hit us broadside and threw me all the way across the boat, and I hit the railing on the other side with my face. And in fact, this scar on my chin is from that accident, and it also knocked my front teeth out, but when the water finally subsided, all I could even think was, "Thank God that I'm still on this boat," because if it would have thrown me over the railing, that would have been it right then and there. That would have history right there. I would have been done,
Yeah.
and
And
that's
this
when
was
I
all before
realized,
kids?
what's that?
Was this before kids?
Yes, this was before kids. Yes. Yeah. And that's when I realized that, okay, you've saved up enough money. I finished out my contract and had about another 30 days left to work on that contract. And I came home never to return to Alaska as a fisherman again and stuff, and started my own business the following year.
Is it the same business you have now?
No, no, we've got so my very first business ever was I started a cleaning and carpet cleaning and restoration company, carpet cleaning and water damage restoration. I knew a guy in Seattle that was in that business. And from the perspective that I had, he looked like he was pretty successful. And I thought, well, gosh, if he can do it, then so can I. And so that's how I chose to get into that industry, Miguel. There was no other thought than that. And I will tell you that my first year in business, I blew through about $300,000. I still just didn't know what I didn't know. And I was not making a profit. And fortunately, I found this guy, Joe Polish, through a industry trade magazine and stuff. And I ended up hiring him. And with his help over the next 3 years, we completely transformed that business into a by referral only company that served high end clients. In fact, we were top 1% in the industry of cleaning and restoration businesses and running one van operations and stuff. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I am incredibly grateful to Joe. And heck, him and I are still friends to this day. So,
Yeah. Wow. And I imagine that was part of your journey. It's where you're at now with your current business. Why don't you catch us up to speed? What are you doing nowadays? Tell us about family life. I know you have how many kids?
we've got 7 kids and currently 6 grandkids. Until about 6 more weeks, we'll have 7 grandkids.
Wow, 7 and 7. That's amazing. So tell me about how, that part of the journey. I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of led up to you starting this business where you're really utilizing relationships as not just a tool, but and I mean this in the most positive way, but a commodity almost, right? This is of relationships. And so what led you to all of that?
Well, so we'll back up a little bit, and I'll kind of like go through the story quickly. So when I met Joe, one of the things that I so through him and running that cleaning business, I ended up going to this seminar back in 1999 where I heard these guys talking about the internet and they were doing stuff on the internet. And at that time, that was like all new to me. And but I was just really fascinated by it. And I'm like, man, wouldn't it be cool to be able, if I could use the internet so I could like not just have a local impact through my business, but to have a nationwide and maybe even a worldwide impact. And I ended up starting this website, probably one of the ugliest websites on the internet ever. It was called getmoldsolutions.com. And we ran that.
Get Mold Solutions.
Mold solutions, yes, because mold back in 1999, 2000 was a big, fat, hairy deal in the news. It was a big topic. Ed McMahon had a big problem in his home with mold and water damage and stuff, and so it was all over the media. And so I started helping people just by providing information and stuff. And that led to the selling of products because as I'm providing information, they start asking, well, what do you recommend for this or that or the other thing? And how do I find a contractor if I need to hire a contractor? And so we ended up creating informational products. We sold, mold testing kits, we sold cleaning products. And before you know it, within probably it took about 2.5 years, that website was producing about 15,000 a month in revenue for the company and stuff. And thanks to technology, I had built a subscriber list talking about water damage and mold in homes of about 35,000 people. So I had this big subscriber list, and because of the internet and technology, I was talking with more people about the subject of water damage and mold and all that than anybody else in the industry because I was the guy who had the website and the subscriber list.
Interesting.
In 2003, Joe Polish was like, Kev, why don't you come down here to the annual event and show everybody what you're doing with your website? He used to host an annual event for the cleaning and restoration industry. And I'm like, sure. And he's like, and before you come, be sure to document what you do and how you do it. Put it into a course because a certain percentage of the folks, once they hear from you, they're going to want your help and just make sure you're prepared to offer that. And so, I went to his event. I did about an hour-long presentation and showed him what I was doing with the website and everything. I had never spoke in public before this, Miguel. I was a little bit nervous to start with, but a lot of people in the audience knew of me and stuff because I was already in Joe's groups and all that. But at the end, I just simply said, "Hey, if this makes sense to you, if this resonates with you, and you feel like I might be able to help in some way with this, I'd be totally honored to do that. Here's what that looks like, and here's what the investment is." And we ended up making $35,000 in sales of that course that I had created. And I was just like, wow. And so, long story short, the next year, 2004, April 19th of '04, I sold the cleaning and restoration business. We moved into the publishing company full time And over the next 12 years, we sold $16.1 million worth of that training that I had created and stuff.
Yeah.
And I did almost 600 strategic partnerships in that 12 years, and my business would not have grown the way it did without all those partners. I was incredibly grateful for all those partners and the role that they held in my life. I compensated them really well financially for helping me, and I also was making introductions for them because I was I just that was another way that I could provide value to people. And I love talking with entrepreneurs. I love hearing about what they're working on, what's got them jazzed, what's got them excited, what challenges they're having, what opportunities they're trying to take advantage of. And every time I'm talking with them, I just naturally default to who do I know who might be able to help with this? And then I just
Mhm.
started making those introductions. And I did that for years. Well, running that company for 12 years, I did it for free. And it took until I'm making a really big introduction for these 2 guys, Perry Marshall and Brian Kurtz. What got me thinking because those guys, man, those guys just really started doing some big stuff together very quickly. I mean, within 8 months, they were making such a huge impact. And
Mm.
that's what got me thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could have a business where I just got to do that all the time? And here we are now. It's been my full-time gig for 9 years now. I get to be this connector and conduit of trust for absolutely amazing entrepreneurs, making introductions that lead to 5-figure, 6-figure, 7-figure opportunities, and we're gonna be making 8 and 9-figure impact as well. So, that's totally the direction we're going, so.
That's amazing. And what else contributed to you wanting to focus on that? Because I mean, obviously you were doing it already for a long time. You mentioned 12 years running this business. You're talking to all these business owners, you're learning about their problems and what they need. At the same time, you're talking to other people who may be able to fulfill some of those problems. And so you're making these connections. But what else was kind of going through your mind of maybe making this more of a business besides, there's obviously the financial aspect, but you also have a growing family. And what did time value and all of that have to do in the creation of this new business?
Yeah. So, well, for 22 years now, I guess 23 now, because we're in a new year, I have been extremely focused on how do I make sure my business fits in with the lifestyle that I want to live? Because I am, first and foremost, I'm a husband, I'm a father to 7 children, and now, grandpa to 6, soon to be 7. And I didn't want to be the entrepreneur who provided financially for his family, but was not there and be present for his family. I wanted to be present and the provider. And so I've always, like I said, for 23 years now, that's been my focus and stuff. And I will tell you that there was a big lag time from making that initial introduction for Perry and Brian and having that initial thought of, "Wouldn't it be cool to have a business like that?" To before it even started happening, which was like, well, like, not till 2017, so we're talking there was like a 7-year lag time in that. And a lot of stuff happened in that 7 years. Some of those things, like, made me think like, "Oh, man, you could really do this," and other experiences made me think like, "Man, what are you thinking even trying to do something like that? Who do you think you are?" You know? I remember
Mhm.
talking with,
Limiting beliefs, top.
heck
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, and I mean, I remember having a conversation one time with a guy who I really respected, who he too was, he's known for making some really valuable introductions and stuff. And I was telling him about Perry and Brian and, like, that I was like really thinking, man, I'd really love to turn this into a business, and have this be my full-time thing. And he's like, "So you're thinking you want to get you charging money for this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Kev," he's like, I couldn't even imagine charging people money for making introductions." And I'm gonna tell you, Miguel, I left that conversation feeling so deflated because, for one, I really respected this guy. I still do. But that was his take on it, because he made the introduction. He's like, "Man, I couldn't even think of charging for that." And I'm like, so I'm thinking to myself, "Well, man, maybe I shouldn't be either. Maybe this isn't even ethical to do this and stuff." And so it took a long time to just really not only wrap my mind around it and just do this in a way that is just in complete alignment with who I am and how I want to show up in order to be able to serve the people I get to serve and stuff. And so that when I am explaining what I do, that I am totally, because you know what? If we don't believe in what we're doing and we don't believe it's valuable for the people we serve, it's really hard to make a case on why they should be a part of it.
Yeah.
And but when we do believe in it, it's way easier for us to, explain what we do, and we come across different when we totally believe in it and we believe in who we're serving too. Yeah.
I appreciate that background because for a lot of people when they see a business that's established and maybe doing well, we don't always know what it took to get there, right? We don't know how many attempts that business owner had, how many times they may have given up on the idea. You said something that kind of two things that really resonated with me. One of them is kind of this belief, I don't want to be the entrepreneur that provides without presence for your family. Where did that come from? Can you give me some examples of where you learned what you didn't want to be? Is that who you were before? Is that something you
Heck
saw?
yeah, I was. Oh yeah, I was totally that guy.
Yeah.
That I was providing financially, but I wasn't around because I was working my butt off and I was working so many hours. I was working weekends and all that.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I was totally that guy who was not present and stuff. And so, and fortunately, we figured that out. I mean, before my kids got too old, and so, and especially my older kids remember it, but my younger kids, they never experienced that.
Um,
Because there's a 20-year gap between my 4 older kids and then
who's your oldest and your youngest?
my oldest, Jerry is 38,
Uh,
and so it's
He's my
38,
age.
so Jerry's 38, Adam's 36, Michaela's 34, Caitlin is 32, so they're all 2 years apart, and then we got the next child, Brock. Brock is 17 right now.
Yeah.
So there's a big gap, and
Yeah.
the older kids do tease the younger kids about, you all have had it so easy.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, well, such is the case for the older kids and the younger kids, right? That the first kid's always kind of the experiment child, and in your case, maybe the first few. But okay, yeah, I mean that, and I appreciate you being honest and vulnerable and opening up like that. I mean that because that's the reality. I think is I'm sure there's a lot of people in that same position now that might be working themselves and they know it. They know that in their minds that they are providing, that they're trying to build something for the family, but they're doing it without presence. Whether they finally come to terms with that and said this needs to change or whether they're still in that process of justifying it, I think it's helpful to know that hey, we've all been there at some point or another.
Absolutely.
And there is another side to that hill, but it does take some awareness and reconciling, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that resonated with me of what you said is limiting beliefs is who do you think you are? Voice, what's so special about you that you think you can do XYZ? And sure, it took years, but you also weren't alone trying to figure this out. You just mentioned a number of names that I didn't write down and I didn't memorize, but clearly, it sounded like you had a lot of people around you, might have been family. I don't know how much your wife played a role in this. You had friends, business partners, clients that all kind of contributed in one way or the other um, into this path. And so let's kind of fast forward a little bit to where you're at now and what you're currently working.
So now I am just like, I feel like I am so blessed these days. I've made a lot of progress. So I used to, you know, because yeah, that publishing business that I ran for 12 years, we got that to where at its peak, we were pushing 2 million a year in revenue in that business. And I was just a one-man operation with a couple 1099 team members. I was just working out of my home and stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but now, the kind of entrepreneurs that I serve, they're running businesses anywhere from, maybe 300,000, 400,000 on the low end on up to 750 million. And I, entrepreneurs that had accomplished like so much more than what I felt I had ever accomplished, I would kind of put them on this pedestal. And I remember, in 2020, I was kind of starting to get some traction with some stuff I was doing. And I was talking with a good friend of mine about one entrepreneur in particular. And that and he knew this person. And I was telling him that, yeah, he's like, well, are you gonna invite him to join your thing? And I'm like, yeah, I said, I don't know, I mean, they're already, they're already really well connected, and I don't know that I'd be able to help them that much. And they're running a really successful business. And my friend's like, well, geez, it sounds like you already made up his mind for him. And I'm like, okay, I hear you. I was like, I'll at least talk to him, and see. And when I had the conversation with him and told him what I was doing, he's like, wow, Kevin, yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I'd love to be a part of that. And I was like,
Mm,
wow.
yeah.
So on one hand, I'm like, wow, look what happened there. And when he joined, I'm like, okay, please let this be valuable for him. And it was. And so, I have gone through some immense personal growth to where now, the I don't care who I'm talking to. I can be talking to the founder of a $750 million company. I can be talking with the leader of a nation, and I'm going to be totally cool just having a heart to heart conversation with them. Because what I have come to realize is that, that we are way more alike than we are different. And every single one of us is doing the very best we can with what we've got.
Yeah.
And when we just have heart to heart conversations and we can keep it real, man, we can really get into some stuff. And for me, where I'm just always looking like who can I connect them with? Who can I connect them with? Man, I've been able to make, and the thing is, the right introduction, the right person getting, connected. If they're running a $500,000 business or a $10 million business, or if they're running a $750 million business, well, the value proposition is different based on where they're at. And what I have found is like, oh, you go up the ladder a little bit, and the introductions become really valuable because of who they are.
Right.
And so that's, and so now I'm really excited to have conversations with all these entrepreneurs and just get to know them, just have a heart. And the conversation doesn't change. It's the same kinds of thing. Like, hey, what are you working on that you're most jazzed and fired up about? What are the challenges you're dealing with right now that you're trying to figure out, just work through and stuff. It's the same conversation regardless of who they are or how big their business is or what they're doing.
They're just people.
They're just people. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. What I'm thinking about when I'm hearing you say all of this is what it means to find alignment between your, and this is kind of what you were talking about earlier. You were trying to figure out a way that you can be there more for your family. Um, and it's this bringing alignment between business and our personal lives, right? You had self doubt. Is this something that I should even be doing? That one individual that you said, oh, I would never charge, for making these types of introductions. And you had some doubt. Should I even be doing this? Is this even ethical? That to me tells me, I mean, you are a caring person. You're not just doing this. I mean, sure, there's plenty of money to be made and there's nothing wrong with that, but you're a caring person. You want to make sure that you're doing things and ethically and morally. And so all of a sudden, I don't know if anybody else experiences this or if it's just me. I'm sure it's not. But when you start going down this path of, you're doing the things that make you feel authentic, that make you feel like you're in your zone, and they're aligned with your values, with what it is that you're trying to build in life, in your business, for your family, for yourself. You start to kind of become this magnet where you start attracting the right people and the right opportunities. And that's kind of what I think about is kind of, does that resonate? This sense of alignment and attraction?
100%. 100%. when I just got in alignment and, so I have had mentors in my life. I mean, one guy in particular comes to mind all the time, Jesse Elder. This guy, Jesse Elder, I've known Jesse for 13 years now. And that guy 13, 12, 11 years ago, he was seeing stuff in me that I couldn't see for myself, much less own that, and I do today. All these years later, I can own that. I am, there is nobody else who does what I do. I am definitely in a class of one. There is nobody else who is so intentional and so hands on when it comes to making introductions for the right kind of entrepreneurs and stuff. And I know hands down that, I can identify who an ideal person is for me to work with. And like if I'm extending an invitation, it's because I know hands down that we can do some really cool stuff together, And but to get to that point, there was a lot of years because so I remember I was at we were at a seminar, a 3-day seminar, and Jesse was at this seminar too. And it was the end of this 3 days, and we're having lunch. And he points out to me, he's like, Kevin, I just want to share some stuff that I just saw over the weekend here and stuff. And he's like, every time, he's like, when I see you in a conversation with somebody, both of you are like 100% engaged. It's kind of like that movie, that show Get Smart, where that thing comes over the two of them and they're just like locked onto each other. That's
Yeah.
how I saw you every time I saw you in a conversation with anybody. And yet so many people, they come to these events and they're in the hallway or in the bar and they're having conversations, and one person might be engaged, and yet the other person is actively engaged in how to get out of this conversation. You can see them. You can watch them scanning the room or whatever,
Yeah.
or looking at their watch or trying to figure out, how do I get out of this conversation, And he's like, you just have this, like, just innate just way of you just connect with people on such a meaningful and deep level. And he's like, it's just a gift that you have. And he's like, you don't have to do anything about it. That's just who you are. And I didn't see that in myself. Even though he's pointing it out to me, I did not, I mean, I couldn't own that at that time. And until we can really own our own gifts, our own God-given gifts and abilities, and we just know what we know, and when it comes back to that, what you're talking about, that whole alignment thing, and when we just know what we know, now we're not selling people on what we do and stuff. We're just having a heart-to-heart conversation, and if there is an opportunity, if we do have the solution for somebody that's right in front of us, and our job isn't to sell our stuff. Our job is to let them know what we do so that
Yeah.
they can make a decision. Do they feel it's worthwhile?
Exactly.
And when we let go of I need to sell my stuff, and I'm just going to present to the right people and let them make a decision. And that's my job, is to allow them to make a decision, whatever that decision is. And we just
Mm.
let go of the rest and stuff. And we
Yeah.
totally do attract the right people. The right people say yes, and they say
Mm.
yes at the right time.
Yeah. That's beautifully said. It's not selling your stuff. It's allowing people to kind of make their own choice, because that's kind of where the connection, that's where the connection happens, right? They're either aligned or they're not. Thank you for sharing that. No, so I wanted to talk about, so what is it that you do for some people, for people? There's going to be folks listening to this, and we're going to be making clips. So over the next couple of weeks, you'll be seeing small little shorts posted on social media. And so just to have people learn a little bit more about you and what you offer, you've kind of talked about it already. And people might be wondering, well, okay, so he makes introductions, makes relationships. How would you explain what you do?
Yeah. So it is making introductions, but it's a very hands-on approach, because the size and the scope of the introductions it's so important that I don't want to leave stuff to chance. And so what we do, I host what's called a virtual roundtable. And that's how I kind of like invite people into my world. And I host these virtual roundtables on Zoom, and they're small groups. So they're like, 3 or 4 entrepreneurs at a time. And I never tell anybody when I invite them who else is going to be joining them, because I don't want none of them Googling and researching each other in advance.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I don't want 'em any of them coming with preconceived ideas about who they're gonna be meeting. I just want them to show up ready to help and to serve and to contribute and pour into others. And of course, the only kind of entrepreneur that I invite is entrepreneurs who show up that way. That is their default. That is like hardwired into their DNA. They couldn't show up any other way. And the beautiful thing is when everybody shows up that way, well, everybody gets to receive in a really powerful way too and stuff. So when everybody gets there, nobody knows each other. I mean, every once in a while, one person might know one other person, but 99% of the time, nobody knows each other. And yet 2.5 hours later, they're all exchanging contact information, making plans to follow up with each other, opening their networks for each other, referring business to each other. And it just happens. It happens every single time.
Mm.
And I love facilitating that conversation. I've done over 400 of these roundtables at this point. I've got very good at curating the right people and then setting the context for the conversation to take place, because it needs to take place in a certain way for that to happen. And so that's how I go about making these kinds of introductions and opening these kinds of doors for people.
Yeah. So you're curating the right people to the right room. You're getting to know through your process of just what you do. You're coming across different people, you get to know them, and you're inviting them to a group session, if you will, of no more than 3 to 4 individuals. You're also providing this kind of I'll call it a safe container, a space where you're not giving any information about each other prior to the event. So they can't look each other up. They can't find each other on Google. They can't see what kind of connections they already have in common, and maybe ask for people's opinions or feedback. Hey, what do you think about Joe Smith, who I'm about to meet next week? So they're all coming with the same intention, it sounds like, which is, and I'm sure you're kind of proposing this ahead of time, which is come here to be open to give fully, open to receive fully. You're going to be surrounded with other people who I value and I handpicked to vibe with you, to resonate with you in one way or another. And through that, and this is part of your natural skill of being able to select these individuals and put them all together. That's very powerful, very unique, and it's very different compared to what the traditional type of networking, right? What are some traditional types of networking that not that you compete with, but that people are more accustomed to, and how is this different?
Yeah. Well, so for the last 22 years, I have invested over 7 figures putting myself in rooms where I can meet people and stuff. So I was investing in all kinds of different groups. I mean, anywhere from 12,000 a year to 50,000 a year to 70,000 a year to be in certain groups. And so the typical thing is being a part of these groups. You're going to get on a plane, and you're going to fly somewhere for a couple of days. And so you're going to take, 3, 4 days away from your family in order to participate in that. And then when you get there, you're going to have, who knows, depending on the group, 20 to 30, maybe even 50 or more people there for those couple of days. And so you've kind of got to navigate that space and figure out who's who and who are my people. And I will tell you that in every group I have ever been in, there are people who are givers and there are people who are takers. And there's a spectrum of that. And it's like nobody's necessarily all the way at the far, not everybody's either at the far ends of that, but there's a spectrum of that. And just having that experience over all the years, that's part of what kind of got me thinking about this is like, well, what if you did this and got people together and you only invited well-established entrepreneurs who are all focused on using their business as the vehicle to make their biggest impact, who every single one of them are just givers through and through. That's how they show up, you know. What would that do? Well, now we know what that does. And so when people come to a roundtable, you know, it's a 2.5 hour time investment. Now, there's no financial investment because that's a kind of getting to know each other kind of a thing. But still, for a busy entrepreneur, a 2.5 hour time investment, that's a pretty substantial ask of somebody's time, you
Yeah.
know? And so anybody who shows up there, they have already placed a certain amount of trust in me, and they have that level of trust in me where that, like, okay, I'm going to commit to giving Kevin and these other people who I don't even know who they're going to be 2.5 hours of my time. And because of the interaction I've had with Kevin, I trust that it's going to be worth my time. And so that trust then gets carried over to the other people because Kevin's like, they're like, oh, if I'm just going to trust Kevin too, that he's going to invite the right kind of people, that this is going to be my kind of people and stuff too, you know? And so it does and that is one of the biggest things in doing every bit of this. It's this whole trust thing that there
Yeah.
has to be trust in competence and trust in character. And there also has to be an alignment of interests and values. And it's that intersection where those four come together. That's where magic happens. That's the intersection that we create on these virtual roundtables.
Interesting. Well, you talked a lot about trust. I have a question on trust. So, we're living in a digital world. AI is huge, more now than it ever has been. I mean, we're seeing AI evolve at speeds that make, when I think about the tech boom back in the early 2000s, and I reckon that to technology and how often there'd be some new revolutionary product or tool or software. And it was usually every couple of years there was some big milestone that was achieved. Now with AI, it seems like every couple of months
Yeah.
there's something revolutionary that's coming out, right? But on the topic of trust specifically, everybody's selling something, right? Whether they're selling products or services. What's one thing that people can do today to build real trust instead of blending into the noise?
Well, for one, I mean, just show up as someone who is trustworthy. And I mean, and that, you know what, really, that's not difficult to do. It's doing simple things like doing what we say we're going to do and just be, just we place a high value on relationships. And so therefore, because we do, then other people will as well when they know that we place a high value on those relationships. And every time that I look at making an introduction, I'm always looking at, okay, will making this introduction further the relationship that I already have with these two people and stuff? And if I ever feel that the answer to that is no, that introduction would never get made. And I do get people reaching out to me, hey Kev, can you connect me with so and so? And sometimes I might know that person, sometimes I might not, but I'm always like, if I could, okay, what's the purpose? And what do you have to offer to them? What's, and because that's always what it's got to be. It's got to be from a place of service, not from a place of I want this kind of a thing. It's got
Mhm.
to have both pieces. And so, the trust is everything. That is everything. And that's what, I mean, and because of AI, we are in it right now, at least we are in a trust recession totally right now,
Mhm.
and the more AI is doing its thing, the more people are looking like I mean, I saw a news story over the holidays where a section of a highway not too far from us got washed out by the river, and it showed a photo of it, and it was like a perfect square out of the highway, right down the yellow line in the middle of the highway that this river had taken out. And I showed my wife the picture. My wife's like, "Pfft, that's AI. That's not a real photo." And I was like, you know what? She might be right. Because like, I mean, that it looked like somebody cut a square piece out of a cake,
Yeah.
but it was an actual photo. But her knee-jerk reaction is that's not even real,
It's hard
And
to tell. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and this whole thing, I will tell you, relationships, real, meaningful relationships are gonna become more and more and more valuable.
Well, I was recently hearing about something where it was really a conversation between two individuals, and one was talking about, I really feel like I'm developing trust with this person, and this was actually more on the dating side, right? But this can very much happen in the professional world. And she says, I feel like I'm building trust with this person. I'm kind of liking them. But when I met with them in person, the interaction that I was having with them, I could tell it was the same voice, same sort of, the way they kind of express themselves, but they didn't seem as polished, in person. And so I wonder, how much that also plays a role in relationships and in trust, where people might be using AI, for example, to communicate, behind the scenes through email or through text messaging and stuff like that. And then when it comes to actually picking up the phone and meeting in person, they can't deliver on that same persona or personality that they're creating with the use of AI. And they're using AI to build trust.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and, that could definitely, potentially come back to bite, and I'll tell you, well, I'll go back to my friend Jesse Elder because, I remember 13 years ago when I first met him, one of our early conversations, he made a comment to me. He's like, "Kev," he's like, "I got nothing to hide and nothing to prove." And it just landed with me so dang hard because I'm like, "Wow, what an amazing place that must be to come from." Man, I'd like to come from that place, and today I do get to come from that place, and coming from the place of just being able to just show up and be us, complete with whatever we might perceive are our faults, but yet, you know what? That's what attracts people to us, is just
Mhm.
being real and keeping it real and not trying to be something that we're not, not having to feel like we need to show up in a certain way because we're going into this environment or because we're going into this environment. And I'll tell you what, man, it is such a weight lifted when we realize that I don't have to show up as anybody other than just me, and that is totally cool. And the right people are gonna be attracted to me, you know?
Yeah. How has building this business helped you achieve some of the personal stuff that you were talking about? You've wanted to develop more time with family, and I've spoken to you a couple of times, and that's one thing you always mention is you don't miss any game, you don't miss any moment, you're always there. I think in one of our meetings, I don't know if it was your wife or somebody walked in something about your keys, and so there is no separation. I mean, there's very little separation between your personal life and your business. But can you give some examples of, you've gone through this whole journey. You were this business owner that was providing and doing a great job providing, but you were hustling and working hard on weekends. You weren't present, and you wanted to be able to build a business where you can still provide, but also be present. And in fact, potentially, maybe even be able to provide more than you were in the past, but also be there and have that intention of being present. So, what are some examples of what this business has allowed you to do?
Yeah. Well, today, my typical workday, so we've got kids that are in high school right now, and so I've got a daughter that I take to school every morning, and so I take her to school, and then I usually get back home from dropping her off. I get back home around 8 o'clock. And so I'll have breakfast with my wife and then usually start my workday. I'll come into the office around 9, and typically I don't have my first conversation for the day scheduled till 10. So I've got some just buffer time to either, I don't know whatever I'll do. Maybe sometime. Well, this morning I was watching this video of Frank Kern because I'd heard about it and I'd never seen it, and it's like a 2-hour video, and I just got fascinated by it, and so I've been sitting there watching that the last couple days and finished it this morning. Sometimes I might read a book, sometimes I might follow up with some emails or what have you. But then I'll have conversations scheduled throughout the day. That might be maybe just a get to know somebody conversation that I got introduced to. It might be a podcast interview for my podcast, or as in this case, doing a podcast interview with you for your podcast. It might be a discovery call or a sales conversation, but those calls are typically at, like 10 to noon and then 1 to 3. Those are the windows for my calls and stuff. And I'm done working every day at 3 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, because that's when my kids get out of school and stuff. And
Mm,
so I am always done by 3 o'clock. On Fridays, those are the days that I host virtual roundtables, and I'll host those virtual roundtables a couple times a month on a Friday. And so if I'm hosting a virtual roundtable, I'm done working by like between 12:30 and 1 o'clock on that Friday. And if I'm not hosting a virtual roundtable, I just take the Friday off and make it a 3 day weekend. So either way, it's a 2.5 day weekend or a 3 day weekend every weekend and stuff. And that's my typical work schedule. And and then like if we've got vacations planned, which like we've got like I don't know, so far this year, I think we've got like 4 or 5 trips planned throughout the year. Some of them more local, some of them get on a plane and go somewhere.
yeah,
And we always plan those out in advance and stuff. And so I have complete, I don't know what you call I can do whatever the heck I want with my time.
yeah, yeah, and you could work also if you need to from wherever. So if you're out, traveling somewhere and you happen to had a meeting scheduled, you can potentially still take that meeting from
Yeah.
almost anywhere around the world, as
Yeah.
long as you have good access to the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Wow.
if I'm traveling for business, I'll still have those meetings. And now the beautiful thing is when I take a trip with family, all my clients, they know that like, okay, I'm gonna be gone for this week and I'm going on a family trip or we're going to Hawaii or whatever we're doing. And they know that and they're totally cool with that. And so I do get to take the whole dang time off and be completely present. And I don't do work when I'm on family vacation. I don't do any work at
Yeah,
all. And there's, and to be able to work with clients and serve clients who are not just clients, but every single one is a friend as well. And they are people that I would invite into my home, that I have invited into my home and
yeah.
stuff.
Kevin, one of the reasons I really wanted to have this interview with you was this question about relationships, or the topic of relationships rather. Everybody knows, I think, and we've all heard and read books and saw podcasts that talk about the importance of relationships. If we all anybody who has a mentor or a business coach has heard them talk about, I didn't get here on my own. I did it because of relationships, or maybe I had a coach. That relationship, we all know inherently that relationships are important. Family is important. Friendships are important. If you belong to a congregation, the community you belong to is important. Relationships we know to be important. And yet I feel that there's this big gap, or there's something missing, that people miss out on something when it comes to relationships. What is it about relationships that you figured out that I feel that you might think other people are not taking advantage of, or missing the opportunity with the aspect of relationships?
I think a lot of people view relationships transactionally and that what can I get from this, versus just let that piece of it go and let me just like create some relationships with people and let me just be of service to people and stuff. And I'll tell you, so like having a conversation with an entrepreneur. And I mean, even if we're not a good network, even if we don't consider, maybe we consider ourselves more shy, more introverted, and we're not what we would consider a good networker. You know what? Here's the deal: we don't have to be, because if we think about it, we're trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I need to say in a conversation? How do I even start a conversation? How do I keep a conversation going? Well, you know what? We can take that totally off our plate. And so instead of starting a or having to feel like we need to keep the conversation going, what if we just asked, especially if we're talking about entrepreneurs, what if we just asked an entrepreneur, hey, what are you working on right now that has you most jazzed and most excited? And then just let them talk. Because I guarantee you, well, for one, that's one of my favorite questions to ask an entrepreneur, because it always gets them talking and it gets them pretty animated too.
What's working for you? What isn't working for you? I helped found this Latino business referral network that I'm actually going to their meeting tomorrow. Something I've taught people about is, if you can't figure out what to talk, there's so many things to talk about besides the weather and what you did for the weekend. Talk about something positive. What are you looking forward to? What's going well? What's not going so well? What has you excited, for this weekend? What are you looking? Yeah. I had a mentor that told me, you always got to have something to be looking forward to, right? I mean, otherwise, what is this all for?
That's right.
But you said something that really struck me. Most people view relationships transactionally. And as you were explaining that, I just had a vivid memory. And you're absolutely right, Kevin. I think you hit the nail right on the head. Initially, when you said that, I thought most people view relationships transactionally. The people, like for instance, people on the giving end, but sometimes it's also on the receiving end. And the example that I thought of, I was recently referred to a nonprofit organization. I'm going to be helping them basically manage their 403B plan. It's a small transaction, but I got introduced to the client, and part of my process is I like to meet with clients, get to know them a little bit. Even if there's no other opportunities, I want to know what they're about. I want to know if there's other people I can connect them to, if there's other ways that I can help support them. And so we scheduled a 30-minute meeting. I met with the president, or whatever her title is, and her first question is, hey, just for the sake of time, what are you hoping to accomplish in this meeting? And I said, I literally don't have an agenda. I have everything that I need. You guys are ready to go. I just wanted to spend this time getting to know you a little bit and seeing if there's any other way that I can help provide to help you. And she says, well, she immediately started thinking on the defensive side. She got a little defensive and said, well, and her brain, she started thinking, well, we're too small. There's really no other services that you can actually provide. When in fact, she did give me a little brief detail, and they provide services to legislation, kind of like lobbying services for AI and things like that. It was very interesting, but maybe I don't have any connections. But somebody like you, for example, I could make that introduction and say, I know somebody who might know somebody in this role. But yet people are so accustomed to viewing things transactionally that when I say, I just want to know more about you so that I can help, they associate the word help with, oh, you're just going to try to sell me
Yeah.
something else.
Yes. Yeah. Because of past experiences they've had, and and I totally get, why people respond that way because of those experiences, and but then when they do start to experience what it is like being around us and how we show up, they do figure out that, like, oh, Miguel's different, and we just gotta let them be, and maybe they might end up talking with somebody else, or maybe they might end up having another conversation with you where they just kind of figure out, oh, he really is just trying to help and stuff. He's just trying to be of service. You're right. People can be thrown off by that because so many people don't show up that way.
And that's what you're trying to change. And so I have two more questions for you. One is, if there's one thing about relationships that you would want for people to remember, what would that be? One thing that can help them as business owners on their path.
So here's the thing. No matter who somebody is, no matter how big of a business they run, no matter how great things look from the outside looking in, there is not a single person on the face of this earth that gets too much appreciation. Everybody wants and craves more genuine appreciation. So if you want to connect with people, doesn't matter who they are, just show genuine appreciation. And this goes for the gal serving you coffee at the morning diner. Show appreciation. Do it regularly. Let people know. Tell them that you appreciate them. You see a successful entrepreneur put out an article and stuff, look up their contact, and maybe, you know what? Maybe you shoot them on a message on LinkedIn or what have you, and you never hear back from them. Doesn't matter. You're not doing it because you're going to hear back from them. Maybe you do hear back from them because you let them know how much you appreciated something that they put out. But I'll tell you what, you start showing genuine, and you just be actively engaged in showing appreciation for people, you will be blown away by how many interactions you find yourself in just by doing that.
Yeah, I love that. Show appreciation, which is the opposite of making it about a transaction, right? And that's so to answer the question of how do I stop making this feel like a transaction? Show gratitude, show an appreciation. Start with that. That's awesome. And then I'll leave you with this last question. It's the same question I asked all my guests, and that is, so the name of this podcast or this interview series is life first conversations. That means something to me, and it means something to the different guests that I've had on the series. What does life first mean to you?
Yeah. So for me personally, what it means is me being able to be the husband I want to be, the father I want to be, and the entrepreneur that I want to be. And I'm trying to remember what that Frank Kern video I've been watching. I can't remember what it's called. But he's talking about asking ourselves, what do we want? What do we want for our life on a daily basis? What do I want to do when I get up in the morning? What do I want to, what do I want to have for breakfast? Who do I want to have breakfast with? What do I want my day to look like? Who do I want to be talking with? Who do I want to be interacting with? What do I want those conversations to look like? All this stuff. And most of us never ask ourselves, what do I want? And we can certainly talk about what we don't want. We can talk about that all day long,
Or what we're unhappy with?
or what we're unhappy with. Yeah. And but what if we started just looking at what do I want, and then just start looking at that and what comes up for us, and what do I want my day to look like, and who do I want to be interacting with, and how do I want to be serving people, and I'll tell you, that's how we create the life that we want. And when we create, and it's for us entrepreneurs, when we create a business that just allows us to show up as our just genuine self and serve people in a way that is just in complete alignment with who we are and how we want to show up, and the clients that we serve are people that like we would also consider our friends, I'm going to tell you what, man, that's a game changer. And so now, we just have this life that just totally fits in and it totally works. And we get to show up as our clients get us at our best because we just have structured our life to have it be that way and stuff.
Life first to you means putting the things that are all the things that are most important to you, including your business, because your business includes, and especially in your particular business, it includes these deep, meaningful relationships that you're building and the impact that you're also making in other people's lives, not just your family. But it's living intentionally. It's asking yourself those questions of what do I actually want, and then building a life around that. That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. And for anybody listening, if you're tired of or want to add to the networking you're already doing, the traditional networkings, you join a club, you join a network, you go to the meetings, you meet with as many people as you can, but it's up to you to get these introductions, to meet with these individuals, and make something happen from those relationships. This is what Kevin is offering is an opportunity to have somebody who's intentionally engaged in you and making exclusive and well thought out introductions to the right people at the right time. Um, if that's a service or a relationship that you want to have, definitely reach out to Kevin. Kevin, what's some of the best ways for people to reach out to you if they're interested?
I'll tell you what, why don't we do this? So if what we've been talking about resonates and stuff, what I'll do is I'm going to suggest people take a look up the $1 Million Relationships podcast on Apple or Spotify or what have you, and just check out a couple episodes and see what we're doing there. And if that resonates with you and if that speaks to you, then hit me up you can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm Kevin the Connector on Facebook and stuff. Just shoot me a message. Let me know that you heard the interview that Miguel and I did, and that you'd like to maybe have a conversation about possibly doing an interview for the $1 Million Relationships podcast, because that's just such a great way to get to know each other a little bit. And the fact that you would even want to have a conversation around that lets me know that you place a high value on relationships. Ain't nobody wants to come on the $1 Million Relationships podcast that doesn't place value on relationships.
Right, right. That's right. And I can attest to it. I was on that podcast, and you asked some very questions that really dug to who I was as a person. You were genuinely interested. At least made me feel like you were very genuinely interested in who I was as a person, not just as a professional. So I appreciated that. Kevin, thank you so much for being on this series with me, and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.